Welcome to a deep dive into the world of autism. We're going to be looking at something pretty interesting.
Yeah.
It's a collection of excerpts, all from the perspective of autistic individuals. So
Sure.
kind of
Oh,
getting
wow.
it straight from the source.
Yeah, it's like getting a backstage pass to an experience
Yeah.
that I think we often, try to understand from the outside,
Right.
wouldn't you say?
Totally. And I'm particularly fascinated by this idea that we're going to get into, that autistic individuals experience the world in a fundamentally different way
Yeah.
than those who are not. And to help us navigate these kind of uncharted waters, we have expert speaker here, and they can help us kind of decipher all these powerful firsthand accounts. So,
I think you'll find these excerpts offer a really insightful blend of personal stories
yeah,
and nuanced explanations of the sensory and cognitive differences.
yeah,
And they don't shy away from tackling some of the more controversial aspects of autism.
yeah, I'm excited to get into those.
Yeah.
Like the idea of a cure. Yeah, that's where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
So, one recurring theme is how differently autistic individuals experience the world, particularly when it comes to sensory perception.
All right. Literally how their senses are taking in information
Yeah.
is different. One of the sources compares it to being colorblind
Okay.
in a room where everyone else sees color, and you're trying to follow like instructions that are printed in red on a green background.
Oh, wow.
So it really highlights those,
Yeah, that's a powerful image.
those challenges of sensory processing differences.
Yeah, I've always heard about sensory overload, but I never thought about it quite like that.
Right. And it's not just overload.
Yeah.
Some artistic individuals experience sensory hyposensitivity,
Okay.
meaning that their senses are under-responsive
Uh,
to stimuli. So
yeah.
it's like having the volume turned down on the world.
So it's a spectrum, not just a one-size-fits-all.
Exactly. And then there's this concept of monoprocessing, where individuals have difficulty processing multiple sensory inputs at once. Imagine trying to follow a conversation
Yeah.
while someone's tapping you on the shoulder
Yeah.
and a strong smell wafts through the room, all while you're trying to maintain your balance.
Oh, my God.
It's like your brain can only handle one thing at a time.
Yeah, that sounds incredibly overwhelming, and it makes me wonder how that might impact learning and development.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Traditional teaching methods often rely very heavily on verbal instructions and multitasking,
Right.
which might not be the most effective approach
Right.
for someone who processes information differently.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And speaking of processing information, the sources also delve into the fascinating realm of visual thinking.
Yes, many autistic individuals think in pictures rather than words,
Wow.
like Timble Grandin,
Right.
who describes her thoughts as like a series of images
Yeah.
flashing through her mind.
Yeah. And she, if I'm remembering correctly, also talked about how she initially thought, yeah,
Other people were just like stronger than her
yes,
because they could tolerate things like, scratchy clothes that she found to be like unbearable.
sensory input. Yeah.
It wasn't until later that she realized her sensory experience was just different.
Yeah.
Not.
It really underscores how much we often misinterpret behavior without really understanding the underlying reasons, right?
Mhm.
So many autistic individuals have been told they're too sensitive or, overreacting, when in reality, they're just experiencing the world in a different way.
Right. And it makes me wonder how this might play into social interactions.
Well, that brings us to the concept of theory of mind, which is so often misunderstood.
Okay, theory of mind, refresh my memory on that.
Think of it as the ability to understand that other people have their own thoughts,
Okay,
feelings, and intentions separate from your own right.
gotcha.
It's like having a mental model of what's going on inside someone else's head.
And the sources suggest that autistic individuals may experience differences in this area.
Okay, so they may not be able to.
It varies,
Yeah.
but it can lead to difficulty understanding those social cues
Yeah.
and predicting other people's behavior.
Yeah.
For example, like an autistic child might say dog when he wants to go outside
Okay.
because that's the association in his mind.
Right.
But, someone who doesn't share that association might be really confused.
Right. So it's not about a lack of intelligence or empathy.
Exactly.
It's just a different way of
different way of processing those social cues.
crossing social cues. Yeah. And this brings up a really, I think, important idea.
Right.
It's mutual mind blindness.
Yeah.
So just as autistic individuals may struggle to understand non-autistic perspectives,
Right.
the reverse is also true, right?
Absolutely.
We as non-autistic individuals, we might misinterpret autistic behavior because we lack understanding of their experience. So it's like we're both looking through like a fogged window trying to understand each other.
I love that analogy. That's perfect.
Yeah.
And it has major implications
Yeah.
for how we communicate and interact.
Yeah. We need to be more aware of our own assumptions and be willing to ask clarifying questions.
Yes.
Rather than jumping to conclusions.
Absolutely.
It makes you realize how much we rely on unspoken social rules and expectations
Yeah.
that may not be universal.
Right.
Now, there's one topic I'm particularly curious to hear your take on.
Yeah.
This whole debate surrounding curing autism.
Right.
The excerpts from the autistic community seem to have some pretty strong opinions on this.
It's a very nuanced and often emotionally charged topic.
Okay.
You'll find a range of perspectives within the autistic community itself,
Okay.
which I think is incredibly important to acknowledge.
It's not a monolithic
Not at all.
viewpoint.
Some autistic individuals see autism as an integral part of their identity, a different way of being, not a disorder to be cured. They advocate for acceptance,
Right.
accommodation, support, not erasure.
That's a perspective I hadn't really considered before. It
Yeah.
makes you question our whole approach to treatment.
It really does.
Yeah.
It challenges us to think about what success
Yeah.
or improvement really means. Who gets to define that?
That's a good question.
Right. Is it about conforming to societal expectations?
Yeah.
Or is it about supporting individuals to live fulfilling lives on their own terms?
That's a profound question.
Yeah, and it underscores the importance of listening to autistic voices.
Right. Absolutely.
Like, what constitutes a good life for an autistic person
Yeah.
should be defined by them,
By them.
not imposed from the outside.
And that requires a willingness to understand and appreciate different ways of being in the world.
Yeah, I'm already starting to see how much I have to learn from these perspectives.
I think we all do. The more we listen to autistic voices,
The more we realize how much we've been missing.
this is already shaping up to be a fascinating deep dive.
Oh, yeah. We've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah.
There's so much more to explore,
I can't wait.
from the unique challenges and triumphs of navigating education and employment
Yeah.
to the complexities of relationships and the search for identity.
I can't wait to delve deeper into these topics.
We'll pick up this conversation in our next session, where we'll continue to unpack these powerful narratives and uncover the insights that they hold.
I'm already looking forward to it. I'm still thinking about that idea of mutual mind blindness from our last conversation.
Oh, yeah.
It really makes you realize how much room there is for miscommunication and misunderstanding, even when, like, everyone has the best intentions.
Right, yeah. It's such a crucial concept, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it really comes into play when we start thinking about some of the specific challenges that autistic individuals might face,
Yeah.
in areas like education, employment, and even relationships.
Yeah. One of the things that struck me in these excerpts was how often autistic individuals talked about feeling like they were like living in a world that wasn't built for them.
Right, that feeling of being an outsider
Yeah.
is definitely a common thread, especially when it comes to education.
Yeah.
One writer described their school experience as like navigating a minefield of sensory overload and social confusion.
Wow. A minefield. That's a pretty intense image.
It is. It really captures that sense of anxiety and overwhelm
Right.
that many autistic students feel in traditional classroom settings.
Yeah.
Like, the constant buzzing of fluorescent lights, the scraping of chairs,
Oh, yeah.
the unpredictable social interactions. It can all be incredibly draining.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if there are like better ways to support these students
Yeah.
to create learning environments that are more conducive to their unique needs.
Absolutely. And the sources point to a number of promising approaches.
Okay.
One that kept coming up was the idea of individualized learning plans.
So instead of a one-size-fits-all approach.
Yeah, like cookie cutter.
Right.
It's about creating a more tailored educational experience.
Right. So some students might thrive in like a small, quiet classroom with clear visual aids and like hands-on activities.
Yeah, I see that.
Others might benefit from like movement breaks and sensory tools to help them kind of regulate their input.
It makes me think of that line from one of the sources.
Yeah.
It said, what works for one autistic person may not work for another. And what works for one autistic person on Monday may not work for them on Tuesday.
Yeah, that's so
It's so important, right?
Yeah.
Autism is a spectrum,
Yeah.
not a monolith.
Yeah.
And the key is to be flexible and responsive to each individual's needs.
It's about recognizing that there's no one right way to be autistic.
Right, and it's about valuing neurodiversity,
Yeah.
not trying to erase it.
And speaking of valuing neurodiversity, the excerpts also touch on the unique challenges and opportunities that autistic individuals face in the workplace.
Oh, the workplace. Yeah.
Right.
It can be a particularly tricky environment,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to navigating those unspoken rules of social interaction and office politics.
Right.
One writer described feeling like they were constantly performing,
Yeah.
masking their true selves in order to fit in.
Yeah. That's got to be exhausting.
Incredibly exhausting. It's like having to translate yourself into a language that doesn't feel natural.
Yeah, but the sources also point out that autistic individuals can bring some incredible strengths to the workplace.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Their ability to focus intensely, their attention to detail,
Right.
their logical thinking skills.
Yeah.
These are all valuable assets in many professions.
One of the sources talked about how their autistic employees were often their most innovative problem solvers,
Yeah.
the ones who could see patterns that others missed.
Right, because they're thinking differently.
It makes you wonder if we're missing out on a lot of potential by not creating more inclusive and accommodating workplaces.
I think so. Definitely.
Yeah, and by not recognizing that what might seem like a weakness in one context
Yeah.
could actually be a strength in another.
Exactly. It's about reframing our understanding of normal
Yeah.
and embracing a wider range of cognitive styles and ways of being.
Okay, so we've talked about education and employment, but there's one area that I'm particularly intrigued by.
Okay.
Relationships.
Ah, yes. The realm of the heart.
Right.
The excerpts offer some really insightful perspectives on the unique challenges and rewards, of
Yeah.
forming and maintaining relationships as an autistic person.
One of the challenges that kept coming up was the difficulty with social cues
Yes.
and nonverbal communication.
Right. Imagine trying to navigate a social situation where everyone else seems to be speaking a language
Yeah.
you don't fully understand.
Right. Yeah.
It can be tricky.
That sounds incredibly frustrating.
It can be. But it's important to remember that autistic individuals are just as capable of deep and meaningful connections as anyone else.
One of the sources talked about how their autistic partner expresses love through acts of service rather than grand romantic gestures, which I thought was really sweet.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful example of how love can manifest in different ways, right?
Yeah.
And it highlights the importance of open communication and understanding.
So it's about finding partners who are patient, accepting, and willing to meet you halfway.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
about finding someone who sees you for who you are,
Yeah.
not who they think you should be.
Right. It makes me realize that maybe the key to successful relationships, whether you're autistic or not, is simply being willing to learn each other's love languages.
I love that. That's a lovely way to put it.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the idea that, true connection comes from understanding and appreciating each other's unique ways of experiencing the world.
Now, in addition to those external challenges of navigating a world not always designed for them,
Right.
the sources also delve into kind of the internal landscape of being autistic.
Right. That journey of self-discovery,
Yeah.
the search for identity, the process of coming to terms with one's own neurodiversity.
Yeah.
These are all themes that, run throughout the excerpts.
One writer described it as like a lifelong process of unlearning what you were taught about yourself
Yeah.
and rediscovering who you truly are.
Wow, it's powerful, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it speaks to the resilience and courage of so many autistic individuals who've had to fight to be seen and heard for who they are.
And to challenge the societal norms
Right.
that often define them as deficient or broken.
Exactly. It's about reclaiming your narrative and defining what it means to be autistic on your own terms.
One of the sources used the phrase coming out as autistic,
Oh, yeah.
which I found really interesting. It suggests that there's a sense of liberation
Yeah.
in embracing your identity,
Right.
even if it means going against the grain.
It's a powerful act of self-acceptance.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the growing movement within the autistic community to celebrate neurodiversity,
Right.
not shy away from it.
It's about recognizing that different doesn't mean deficient.
Absolutely.
Listening to these stories, I'm starting to realize that maybe the real challenge isn't autism itself,
Right.
but the way society reacts to it.
That's a profound insight, I think.
Yeah?
And it brings us to that broader question of, what does it mean to create a truly inclusive world for autistic individuals.
Yeah, a world where differences are not just tolerated, but celebrated.
Yes.
Where everyone has the opportunity to reach their full potential,
Yeah.
regardless of their neurological wiring.
That's the vision, isn't it?
Yeah.
And these excerpts offer some really valuable clues on how we might get there.
I'm eager to dive into those clues and explore what a more inclusive future might look like.
We'll do just that in our final session.
Okay, great.
It's time to move from understanding to action, to explore what we can each do to contribute to a world that embraces neurodiversity in all its forms.
I'm ready to get to work. It's really amazing how much my perspective has shifted, by just diving into these firsthand accounts.
Oh, yeah.
It's one thing to read about autism in textbooks or articles, but it's a whole other level of understanding to hear these personal stories,
Yeah.
of navigating a world that wasn't really built for them.
It's like we've been given a glimpse into a parallel universe
Yeah.
where the rules of social interaction and sensory perception are completely different.
Exactly. And it makes you realize just how much we take for granted.
Right.
How much we just assume everyone experiences the world the same way we do.
Yeah, and that assumption, that narrow definition of normal,
Right.
is at the heart of so much exclusion and misunderstanding.
One of the sources used this really thought-provoking analogy.
Yeah.
They said, imagine if left-handedness was seen as a disorder.
Oh, well.
Something to be corrected or cured. It sounds absurd, right?
It does, yeah.
But it really highlights how arbitrary our ideas of normal can be,
Right.
and how easily those ideas can lead to prejudice and discrimination. It makes you wonder how many other ways of being, thinking, experiencing the world
Yeah.
we're marginalizing simply because they don't fit our preconceived notions.
That's a humbling thought.
Yeah, so how do we do that? How do we move beyond awareness to action
Right.
and create a truly inclusive world for autistic individuals?
Well, the sources we've been exploring offer some, really insightful clues.
Right.
One that kept coming up was this concept of universal design.
I've heard that term before, but I'm not sure I fully understand it.
Okay, so think of it this way.
Yeah.
Instead of designing spaces and systems for the average person,
Right.
universal design takes into account the needs of everyone,
Okay.
including those with disabilities.
So it's not about creating separate spaces for autistic individuals.
Right,
But rather about making all spaces accessible and welcoming.
Exactly. Imagine buildings with sensory-friendly lighting and acoustics.
Yeah.
Workplaces with flexible work arrangements
Right.
and clear communication protocols.
Yeah.
Educational systems that cater to a variety of learning styles.
Okay.
It's about designing with diversity in mind from the outset,
Yeah.
rather than trying to retrofit accessibility as an afterthought.
That makes so much sense. And it's not just about physical spaces either, is it?
No, it's about creating a culture of empathy and understanding.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that autistic individuals might communicate and interact differently.
Right.
And that's okay. It's about being patient,
Yeah.
being willing to ask clarifying questions,
Right.
and being open to different ways of expressing oneself.
One of the sources put it this way. Don't assume you understand what someone is experiencing just because you've read about it in a book.
Right.
Ask them. Listen to them. Let them be your guide.
I love that.
Yeah.
Such wise words.
It really is.
And they speak to the importance of, centering autistic voices in this conversation.
Right. Yeah.
It's not enough to just talk about inclusion. We need to actually actively involve autistic individuals in shaping the policies and practices that affect their lives.
One phrase that really stuck with me was nothing about us without us.
Oh, yeah.
It's a powerful reminder that true inclusion requires the active participation and leadership of those who have been historically marginalized.
It's about shifting that power dynamic
Right.
from one of fixing to one of understanding, respecting, and collaborating.
So what can we as individuals do
Yeah.
to contribute to this more inclusive world? It can feel overwhelming sometimes.
Right?
The problems are just too big for any one person to make a difference.
I hear you.
Yeah.
But even small actions can have a ripple effect, right?
Okay.
One of the most important things we can do is to simply be more mindful of our own biases and assumptions.
You mean those unconscious beliefs and attitudes that we all carry around?
Yes.
Often without even realizing it?
Exactly. It's about being willing to examine those biases and to actively seek out perspectives that challenge our worldview.
So read books and articles written by autistic individuals. Listen to podcasts like this
Yeah,
one.
exactly.
Engage in conversations with people who have different experiences than our own.
Right. And
Yeah.
don't be afraid to ask questions.
Right.
Genuine curiosity is a powerful tool for breaking down barriers and building bridges.
Another thing that struck me was the importance of being an ally.
Oh, absolutely.
Speaking up when you see injustice, amplifying the voices of those who are often silenced,
Yeah.
using your platform to advocate for change.
Allyship is crucial.
Yeah,
It's about recognizing that we're all in this together,
yeah.
that creating a more just and equitable world benefits everyone.
One of the most inspiring takeaways from this whole deep dive has been just the sheer resilience and creativity of the autistic community.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah,
Despite facing so many challenges, they're constantly innovating,
Yeah.
finding new ways to connect, to communicate, to thrive.
yeah. It's a testament to the power of the human spirit.
It is.
To adapt, to overcome, and to find joy even in the face of adversity.
Yeah.
And it's a reminder that we all have something unique to contribute to the world,
Yes.
that our differences are what make us strong.
Beautifully said.
So as we wrap up this conversation, I hope you'll walk away with a renewed sense of hope and possibility.
Not to.
The journey towards a truly inclusive world is ongoing,
Yeah,
but it's a journey worth taking.
absolutely.
And it's a journey we can all be a part of,
Yes.
no matter how small our steps may seem.
I agree.
So thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Yes, thank you.
We hope it sparked some new ideas
Yeah,
and inspired you to continue exploring this fascinating world of neurodiversity.
absolutely. Keep learning.
And remember, the conversation doesn't end here. Keep listening, keep learning,
Yeah.
keep challenging yourself to create a world that celebrates the full spectrum of human potential.